I love Monster Musume. It's a delightful ecchi slice of life manga with a monstrously huge cast of charming characters and a warm, passionate fanbase. It's no exaggeration to say that it's a roaring success, Okiado's magnum opus. But rewind back to 2011 and we see an unproven Okiado toiling over a series called Magical Director Mako-chan's Magical Guidance, or Mamama for short. The series was recently given an English release due in no small part to Okiado's international success, and as a fan myself, my attention was immediately drawn to it. So is Mamama another Okiado treat, or did it deserve to flop? High maintenance class president and witch in training Todo Mako is on the eve of her graduation exam. Before she can graduate and inevitably outperform her entire class, she has to find a pure soul from the human world and bring it back with her. Her target is the saintly Onodera Jun, however she ends up making the irreversible pact instead with his depraved twin brother, Onodera Junji, and it's up to Mako to reform him before time is up. To start things off quite nicely, the plot of what a standard chapter would have been if Mamama had run quite a bit longer can start to feel like an episode of a Saturday morning cartoon show, in the best possible way. A single simple conflict or theme is brought up at the start of a chapter and taken to a satisfying conclusion by the end, while the bulk of the chapter is filled with opportunities for Okiado's best attempts at characterization, fan service and comedy. If this manga were longer running, I could see a lot of self-contained chapters along the same vein of what Okiado does right now with Monster Musume. I'm sorry, but comparisons to his other works are just inevitable. Unfortunately, there are lots of issues regarding the use of various concepts and characters. The world building is one of those aspects that is particularly lacking in depth. The magic world and the human world are illustrated as totally separate dimensions, but then if Mako and her friends aren't human, then what are they? There are countless little holes in the basic setup of this manga's premise that little throwaway lines can easily fill in, a lesson Okiado has learned by the time of Monster Musume. And because the world building doesn't go deep enough, the high concepts the series tries to peddle aren't very interesting at all. There's also an issue with the number of characters that get thrown into this story. There's too many. The first chapter introduces 6 different characters to us, so we get a grip on absolutely none of them. Half of those get swept under the rug immediately after to be gradually reintroduced later in a conscious effort to rectify this problem. This makes a huge difference to the quality of characterization and development. On the whole, this series comes off as pretty cynical. Good deed points are accrued in this world by committing selfless acts like picking up garbage in the park or walking an old lady across the street, but they're earned regardless of motivation, which seems to go against the whole point of being a selfless person. This could be an opportunity to incorporate a major theme or message, but it's ultimately wasted and becomes another wedge in our ability to relate to the main cast. I think maybe one of its worst failures is the lack of a major theme, a concern which Okiado has gone down as saying he doesn't focus on. Monster Musume's themes of discrimination and persecution are entirely accidental, and perhaps it's impossible to avoid the use of these themes when you're dealing with a cast of characters whose bodies are wildly inhuman, but whose thoughts and feelings couldn't be more human. Maybe it's no surprise that Mamama lacks that significant backbone since this is not something Okiado tries to work on, and since its initial premise doesn't already imply a central theme. And in the latter half of the series run, you can feel a very palpable struggle on Okiado's behalf to keep the series alive, by throwing as many new popular ideas and concepts into the frying pan as he can. The material becomes almost farcical in its final chapters as a result, which is really a shame. Though the series ends on an elaborate sequel hook, I feel a follow-up to this manga is highly unlikely. Mako's introduction as a character is a little weak, which is a problem seeing as she's our protagonist. We're supposed to believe that she isn't an archetypical class president, but immediately checks all the boxes for that archetype. She comes off as bossy and self-centered, even before she meets Junji properly. Any development she gets over the course of the series is trite and predictable. Meanwhile, her friends are introduced a little hastily, but cast aside for a short while to give our main cast a little breathing room. Once they come back in, we're much more prepared to accept them as additions to the story rather than tacked on eye candy. And although their main purpose really is eye candy, Mako does play off them quite well, meaning what we have are 2 reasonably charming characters who are not an unwelcome sight. Now Junji is an extremely uncomplicated sort of character, but this doesn't harm the story in any significant way, because we're not following Junji's quest to steal a kiss from a witch, we're following Mako's quest to bring a pure soul back from the human world and pass her exam. He's very intentionally a caricature, and the way we're introduced to his brother and then callously thrown Junji's way instead creates a strong point of comparison. The that amplifies his degenerate characteristics. Though it's also really refreshing to see Jun himself make more appearances as a continuous point of juxtaposition. Not to mention he's not the type of character who typically exists in a raunchy comedy. I think if there's any character Okuyado really nails in this manga, it's Junji's. We're never sure if he's just doing something for his own pervy machinations, or if he really does have a few good bones in his body. And as the driving force of the manga, Junji really helps to bring out the best in the rest of the cast. At this stage, Okuyado still has a few problems with the fundamentals of his craft. The pacing of each panel is too fast, and he makes use of only basic screen toning and other such techniques, which rarely support his comedy properly. The panel structure won't blow your mind either. It's keeping all the rules in mind, but what it doesn't do is play around with those rules or push on any boundaries. A stellar composition is also a thoughtful, creative one, and while these compositions aren't awful in any way, they just aren't very striking or ingenious. That isn't to say the artwork itself is bad either. In fact, Okuyado's art is as energetic as ever. His characters are incredibly expressive and full of life, bringing an almost absurdist quality to the material, a part of the charm which is captured by the majority of his works. A lack of proper, consistent development from the cast as a whole is made up for in part by their vivid characterization through the artwork. Though if you're going into this series expecting fan service at the same level as Monster Musume, prepare to be disappointed. Not only is it less explicit, but it is nowhere near as intimate or built up as it is in Monster Musume. Panty shots and chaste kissing are often the ultimate extents of Mamama's fanservice, which isn't a bad thing unto itself, even if it comes off as a little lame, but just don't get your hopes up, lads. Mamama is a meme mess. It doesn't know what sort of manga it wants to be and keeps changing its mind between every chapter. The characters don't grow on you very fast and the artwork is just a little below the benchmark of what you'd expect from a published mangaka. I wouldn't recommend you pick up Mamama as a fan of ecchi fantasy manga, but I would recommend it to fans of Okuyado who are maybe interested in looking at his earlier, more flawed works. There just isn't a whole lot of substance to it at all. I won't deny though that it was personally interesting to see him making all these mistakes, in the knowledge that he's gone on to create what is undoubtedly one of the most beloved harem mangas of all time. Magical director Mako-chan's Magical Guidance is available in English print from 7 Seas Entertainment, and is also available digitally on Amazon's Kindle service. If you happened across this manga without knowledge of Okuyado's other works, then I'd highly recommend you check out his long-running opus, Monster Musume. It's a much more explicit affair with a more refined art style and a stronger narrative backbone. Or if magic is what you're after, then check out Negima, a remarkably long-running fantasy manga about a pint-sized wizard teaching at an all-girls school. Light on fanservice like Mamama, it handles its massive cast with skill and knows exactly what it's doing with its high concepts, while containing an almost shonen-like through-line. If you liked what you saw and want to see more, remember to subscribe, or follow me on Twitter for the latest updates. Links are down in the description, and until next time, cheerio.